Welcome back to DaSquad Daily-ish, where the squad gets together on a daily-ish basis to tell you what's going on in the sports world. What should you pay attention to? And there's a lot. We'll get to it just a little bit. It's going to be a fun 10 minutes to start off your Friday morning. So what's going on? Football? Less than a week away. For my boy Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson squaring off on Thursday Night Football. Cannot wait but to talk nothing but football. But before we get to football, we do have to talk about the NBA playoffs. Pork Chop brought up a very good point the other day, which immediately I rebutted. But after these last couple of nights, after watching the NBA playoffs with a different lens, I don't know, it's got me kind of rethinking. So, our last daily-ish, Pork Chop said that it's really hard for him to watch 4 whole quarters of basketball like he used to. I said, what? The glorious NBA? What we've been seeing has just been so awesome. Damian Lillard was hot when he was in the bubble, MVP, most deservedly. Suns went on an 8-0 run. When the playoffs started, playoffs were hot. Like, it's just great. It's been just great basketball. But again, watching these last couple of nights with a different lens. And man, I think Porky was onto something. So, Professor, what happened on these last couple of nights that made you kind of rethink your stance on NBA's fine? Well, we had Miami versus the Bucks, their second game in the playoff series. And man, it was a decent game. It was pretty good. You have the MVP Giannis, who for some reason doesn't feel like he needs to guard the hottest offensive player on the opposite team, even though he is defensive player of the year. But hey, he's just gonna listen to his coach. That's another story. But like I said, it was a decent game. The Heat kept Giannis in check, even though he went off on the stats, almost had a triple double. They still kept him in check, and it came down to the wire.
And they're going to look to make sure that all the 3 minutes, Middleton's second free throw. I disagree with the call. And
just nastiness. So
you don't have the challenge. I 100% disagree with this call.
Oh, that's not all. So Middleton goes on, makes all three threes. And that's not even it. End of the game. 114. Guess where the ball goes? You got it. Jimmy buckets. He shoots a step back, fadeaway, mid-range shot. Giannis closing out. Again, decent defense. But gets called for the softest of fouls. Guess what? Jimmy Butler goes ahead, scores his free throws, wins the game. And this is with 0.2 seconds on the clock. Tic-tac-y fouls. This league is extremely soft. So it's like, okay, what a good game. Let's move on. Next game, CP3 versus the Houston Rockets, Game 7, everything on the line. Expect a good game. Okay, great. All throughout the game, decent game. James Harden's not shooting that well. Decent defense on both sides, blah, blah, blah. Get to the fourth quarter. Guess what? Close game, down by 1. OKC down by 1. What happens in this sequence is baffling. This is under a minute left to go. This is with under a minute left to go, 1 point difference. Bodies hitting the ground, looking for calls, flops. What are we watching here? What are we watching here? Is this playoff basketball? What was that, like 7 flops, couple travels in the final seconds of the game? Now, yes, James Harden did close out and do great defense and get the block to end off the game to allow Houston to move on to the next level to face the Lakers, where they'll get swept. But that sequence was absolutely baffling. Absolutely. So Porky's point was there's just too much ISO basketball for him. Too much ISO basketball, and the game isn't interesting until the fourth quarter. either at least those two games, he's kind of got a point. Wasn't too interesting to the fourth quarter. A lot of ISO basketball, bad ISO basketball. And then you have the softness of the league affect playoff basketball. Wow. These calls affected these games. These calls affected a series. A series was called because of, now again, I'm not saying these were bad calls. I'm saying the state that the NBA is in is a bit worrying to me, if that's the right word. Worrying. I believe that's the right word I'm looking for. Because you have top tier athletes, like the best basketball players in the world on these courts, right? But this is also a game. It's a game within a game. So you have people like Kyle Lowry, who is known as Kyle Lowry, Marcus Smart, who is known as some of the best floppers in the league, who just so coincidentally is going up against each other in a playoff match, which last night we still saw some flopping from Kyle Lowry as well too. Game wasn't decided by that, but we still saw some flopping. Wasn't the greatest of looks. But again, we expect that from Kyle Lowry. But my original point, these athletes played that side of the game, especially these star athletes. They, like I said, it's a game within a game. They know that they can get these fouls. They know they can get these calls. And when the game really matters, if the game is always going to come down to the fourth quarter and everyone's going to be 1 point, 2 points within, I don't want to see the game being decided by a free throw. I'm sorry. I just don't want that to happen, especially free throws on both sides. What the hell? What are we doing here? So, back to my original point, or back to Porky's original point, as to say, of that it's getting hard to watch basketball. I'm not gonna go full on and say, yeah, I'm gonna scale back my watching of basketball because of that. But this past playoff game, this Game 7 Houston Rockets Thunder playoff game, was like the most watched basketball game since like earlier this year, they said. And so many people saw that. And so many people were disappointed. So many. And I don't want that to be the representation of the game, which I'm not gonna lie, it's right now, it's kind of like what it's looking like. So you have coaches like Steve Kerr, coach of the Golden State Warriors, who is even saying he wants the NBA to scale back on the softness of these calls. Now, this is the coach of the Golden State Warriors, who would benefit the most from calls like this, still saying this. Like, it's getting ridiculous. And with the new generation of talent that we have coming in now, I think the NBA definitely needs to take a look at this, because I don't want our game to evolve into who can get the best foul calls. I don't even know how to put that. Who is that going to be a stat? Like, who can, like, I don't want the game to evolve in like 5 to 10 years to where ESPN is, when they're telling one of those wacky stats, they're just like, oh, well, James Harden is top 3 in drawing a foul outside of 35 feet in the last 10 seconds of the game. Like, come on, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing here? So, yes, Porky had a point. I renege, or so yes, Porky had a point. I recant my statement. I'm not full on that it's unbearable to watch, but damn, NBA, you got to do something about that. Other than that, though, like, again, it's playoff basketball. We're still seeing some great moments within these games. So still looking forward to it. Again, I really don't see Nuggets beating Clippers. I really don't see, even though Toronto got a great dub yesterday. Wow. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it was a 0.5 second 3-point shot in a corner to end the game. So all these games are coming down to the wire. I mean, it's intense in the moment, but when you look back, it's kind of just like, and it has me just that much more excited for next week when we get football back. Super excited. So we got the daily Friday. Tomorrow we're gonna have a podcast drop. Now, the podcast, if you're new to the podcast, are pretty much longer dailies. No, I'm just kidding. It's and they're pretty good, but they last about an hour long. But that should be up tomorrow on YouTube. So if you got nothing to do tomorrow morning, check us out. Again, follow us on Instagram, Twitter. We're trying to do this thing where we get fan engagement, not just for us, but again, the squad is the fan conversation. So do me a favor. These YouTube comments are looking dry as hell. Comment something. I'm gonna try to do better to engage with you. I promise. I will try to do better. We all will try to do better. But say something like, "Yo, fix your hair," or, "Yeah, no, that those flops were extremely unnecessary." Say something. Like, I see you watching us. But no, I'll jokes aside. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. Again, we got our full pot tomorrow. Dropping tomorrow Saturday, so check that out. Again, follow us, DaSquad Chicago, Instagram and Twitter. You can find those podcasts not only on YouTube, but you can also find it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And I thank you guys for rocking with me today. Right here.